Hi, my name is Sandi Jerome, and I'm a writer of middle grade fiction and nonfiction. I'm currently seeking a publisher and a literary agent, and you may be wondering, is this video really about New Zealand almost 20 years ago? But it's actually about a service that I recently used called Southtree. Not connected with them, not a paid promotion or anything else like them, but I have a lot of videos that I wanted to move on to a digital form. They're on high 8 tapes, and I don't know if you have a video box like this, but I went ahead and tested with this video from 2003 of New Zealand, and you can judge for yourself if this is a good thing to use. When you pay for the service, they send you this box. Make sure you keep both the boxes. Then it's a simple process. You just put your tape in there, and then you select how you want it back. I wanted mine back on USB drives. And then they come back. I think it just took a couple weeks, and I had this video. And so I'm pleased. I'm pleased with the quality of the video, especially since it was recorded, 20 years ago with older technology. And I'm pleased with the process, so I think I'll do the rest of the box.
We are in New Zealand. We're on our way to Australia, and we stopped off for 4 days here. This is our hotel, the Hobbiton on Princess Wharf. We have a beautiful view. Harbor. There's the city of New Zealand. Oh, there's the ferry building. So we're up at the top of the Sky Tower. That's our hotel down there. It's at the end of the wharf, the Hobbiton. And our room's on the right side, right?
Yes.
It's over here on this side. There's the harbor. And the Harbour Bridge, New Zealand, of Auckland. Look at all the boats. So two of them, okay. That's actually two down there?
The NZ 40 and 41. First one?
Yeah, up close there's a cone. Right there, and then there's actually a volcano behind it. There's 14 volcanoes within the city of Auckland. I'm going to go over here across the glass floor. So it says here, this glass floor is as strong as the concrete you're standing on. So should we walk across it? What do you think? So it's walking across the glass floor. Here goes Keith. No, doesn't look like he's going to go across it. You going across, Keith?
Sure.
Now here's looking around the other side. Now this wire, if you can kind of see it here, that wire right there is where people go all the way down to that target right down there, the red target. So someone just went down it. She's not skating.
It doesn't appear to be. See your face when they let go of the string.
그 느낌을 알았을 때 대단한 걸 써가지고
So it's Friday morning in New Zealand. We're just getting ready to go on the bus to Hobbiton, Matamata. We're going to go right there to the bus stop. We're downtown. You can tell by the Sky Tower. At the corner of Hobbiton. So we just came straight up That long hill there, that's our hotel down at the bottom of the street. So we're on the bus, we're looking at the countryside here of New Zealand. It's beautiful, lots of sheep, lots of farms, houses there. So we go by. Picture that one house going by.
You're around Hamilton, Lawrence, or Matamata. Some Waikato out in front of us. Down in the valley in front there, just coming up, you'll be able to see the Waikato River. We follow the river most of the morning through to Hamilton. We go through Huntly in about half an hour, Calgary and Narrawahia. Probably won't be stopping. And the comfort break is at Hamilton City, which will be there in about 1 hour. Just before 12 we'll get off over the Mamaka Ranges, quite a bit of native rainforest, and you should be able to see Lake Rotorua as you go down the other side. There's information centres available at the stops in Hamilton and at Rotorua.
Stopped at the downtown. We're just walking around waiting for the tour to start. Our bus got in at 11:30 and the tour starts at 12:30. We're just looking around town. Looks like there's a pharmacy down there, so we're going to go down there. There's Pete. Hi, Pete. And they have a cute little sign here. Go down and get that for you. It says, "Welcome to Hobbiton."
Actually been to Matamata before. Our urban population sits around 6,000 people. But with our outlying country district, that brings the total up to just under 13,000. Now by New Zealand standards, that is an average sized town. Our main industries in Matamata are the dairying industry with the milking of cows, closely followed by the racehorse breeding industry. We're the second biggest in New Zealand to Auckland for the amount of horses that are bred and trained here. Right here, this is our local high school. This is Matamata College. This is where they held the auditions for all the extras on Lord of the Rings. Now around 1,000 people from throughout New Zealand travelled here to Matamata for those auditions. Now we haven't been told exactly how many people were used as extras, but we've had a few Matamata people approach us since these tours have been running, just to let us know that yes, they were in the movie, they were actually one of the extras. Now at the time that the movie was being made, everything was done in such secrecy. Nobody could actually come forward at that stage and tell anybody basically that they were involved with the movie itself. You get to come down here and you can see anywhere between 450 and 700 racehorses being trained here daily. Like I said, we're the second biggest in New Zealand for the amount of horses that are trained or bred and trained in this area. We have an all-weather, all-purpose track in there, so that enables them to train 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. Today, when I took your tickets, on the back page in the top right hand corner you actually see a photograph of the Alexander family. There are 3 sons, Craig, Russell and Dean, and an insert of their father Ian. Now Craig and Dean, the 2 sons on the outside of the photograph, they actually run the sheep farm today. Now the son in the middle, that's Russell, he's a partner in a chartered accountant's firm in Matamata itself. Now, back in 1998, New Line Cinemas, the American film company, they sent out scouts all over New Zealand to fly over to find the possible sites for the making of this movie. Now, when they flew over the Hiniwara Valley, which we're entering very shortly, we're very pleased with what they found. The gentle rolling countryside, to them, they depicted the look of old England. And through this area out here, they realised it was quite secluded and that they'd be able to have the secrecy and the privacy that they desired to make the movie. Now the 2 other things that they were especially looking for Line Cinemas made contact with the family in hope of utilising their property to make the movie Lord of the Rings. Now the day that they decided to make contact with the family, it was a Saturday. It was actually a Saturday afternoon. Mr. Alexander and his 3 sons were actually all at home. They were sitting down watching a game of rugby on TV. There was a knock at the door. Mr. Alexander went up to answer it. And these people introduced themselves to New Line Cinemas, told Mr. Alexander they'd like to make a movie on his property. He looked at them and kindly informed them that, mate, you're going to have to come back in a couple of hours. I'm busy watching rugby. And he sent them on their way. Because to the Alexander family, there's more important things in life than making movies. And to them, that is watching rugby on TV. Now, the representatives from New Line Cinemas, they did come back. They actually came back that same day, just a few hours later. And they sat and they told Mr. Alexander what they were hoping to do. They were going to make a movie, not just any movie, it was actually a trilogy called Lord of the Rings. Once again, Mr. Alexander's like, Lord of the what? He had never heard of it. Suffice to say, as of today, he's quite knowledgeable where it comes to the Hobbiton part of the movie anyway. So that was September 1998. 6 months later, in March of 1999, all the contracts had been drawn up and they were all signed. So yes, the movie was going to be made on the Alexander property. Now the first thing to happen from that time was that the New Zealand government, they contracted in the New Zealand Army to build the road in that we're actually going to travel in on today. That takes us from the gates of the Alexander property down to the set itself. That road is 1.5 kilometres long. It had to be made of a pretty high standard to withhold the amount of traffic that was going to be travelling on it, because in production time there is up to 120 vehicles actually travelling in and out on that one road. Also, not just vehicles of this size, but also big truck and trailer units carting everything down for the building and the set itself. So it had to be of a pretty high standard. Now when the army arrived in the district with their bulldozers and all their other heavy earth moving equipment that they needed to build the road through, some of the neighbours started to wonder what was happening on the Alexander property. Now they were told that the army were there purely just to do an army exercise. Excuse me.
Well, that's a good idea.
So that kept everybody happy until one night down at the local pub, a couple of the army boys, after a little bit too much drink, actually told people that no, they were going to build a road and a big movie was going to be made there. So from that time on, they had to employ a security guard, and he was stationed at the gates of the property where he lived in a caravan. He was there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, just to monitor who was entering the property, to make sure that everyone came off. Now anyone entering that property had to sign a confidentiality agreement stating they wouldn't talk about or take photos of anything that they had seen while they were on set there. Excuse me, please. Hello? Yeah. Buckland Road. Now, has anybody actually read the books, The Lord of the Rings? So the name Buckland's probably quite familiar because they talk about where the hobbits lived in Buckland. Now this road wasn't named because of the movie. This road has always been Buckland Road. So it's just very ironic that Hobbiton was built on Buckland Road. One of those things that just must have meant to be. Now the Alexander property itself is the only sheep farm down this road. They are completely surrounded by other dairying units, people milking their cows. So as soon as you see any sheep out there on the hillside, you'll be guaranteed that that is part of the Alexander property. Now their property itself is 1,250 acres or 500 hectares as you may know it. They run around 100 beef cattle on the property, and in the winter months they run around 5,000 head of sheep. Now at the moment we're in the middle of a lambing season, so that's going to bring the total of sheep on the farm up to anywhere between 10 and 12,000. Today you get to have a look at some of those lambs because we'll be travelling through some of the lambing paddocks where the sheep are giving birth to their lambs. So if you have a look out to your right, you'll actually see some sheep dotted on the hills out over there. year, the New Zealand government okayed a no-flying zone over the whole Alexander property. That was to stop people flying over in any sort of vehicle, like an aeroplane, helicopter, microlight, anything like that, so they could have the complete secrecy and privacy that they desired for making this movie. Even the children that were used as extras on the movie, they weren't allowed to take photographs, talk about what they'd seen when they were on set. So you can imagine them being brought out here by their parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters. They'd all turn up out here thinking that they'd all be able to come onto the set and have a look. They were actually met at the gates of the property where they were put into minivans like this, and they were all taken down the back of the farm to the set. And the family, they had to stay at the gates basically and wait for them, so they didn't actually get to see a lot. We also have people that follow our vans out here, hoping to catch a glimpse of Hobbiton, take a photo from the roadside and leave. But once we get in there, you'll understand what I mean by we've got a 1.5 kilometre drive into the farm, so nothing's actually visible from the road at all. Countryside out to your right there, all those hills, that was what got New Line Cinemas so excited about the countryside out here. To them, that was the look of old England. That was how the description of Middle Earth was given in their views. We're travelling in on today. That's the road that the Army built back in 1999. Yeah, there's a little lamb out on the road just before you come round where the homestead is, just around there. It's going a bit crazy, so you can let the family know. Okay, bye. Let the family know so they can come and get that lamb off the road so it doesn't cause an accident of any type. There's nothing actually signposted to give away the fact that this is where Hobbiton is. That is to give the family their privacy, basically. Now bear with me, I do have a few gates to open and shut today. It is still a working farm. Are the Romney. They are bred firstly for their meat, secondly for their wool. Like I said, you will get to see a little lambs as we go through today.
Okay, so those are breeds. Romney.
Romney?
She goes Romney.
Now and again we do get a sunbather on the track. But hopefully Mum's going to take her, generate to the road.
The babies have tails, see, the mums don't.
There's a couple more.
The babies?
Yeah.
On the road, but they can come over here?
No, they're getting out of the way.
No, they're going the other way.
Well, here comes Mom.
Uh-oh. She's not going to like that. Look at her. She's very upset. They like it down on the road because it's quite warm. Yeah. Four there. Okay.
right, you'll actually see one of the hobbit holes set back into the hillside over there.
Oh,
That is where we're heading over now. That is over where the Hobbiton set is. Basically follows the road right up to the top. That is actually the boundary fence onto the neighbouring property. So as you can imagine, when the movie was being made here and all this was happening, it never really interfered with the day-to-day running of the sheep farm at all, because it was basically kept to the boundaries of the property.
Beautiful country, isn't it? Streams running through everywhere. The mama got separated. Where's the lake?
And the movie. So you can imagine this road here, this is the road that everyone had to travel on every day, up to 120 vehicles per day, travelling down to the set itself. Their next project was to build the only car park that was stipulated in the original contract. Now that car park was known as the technical car park, and that is where the builders would come and all the technical people, because the technical people would actually follow the builders around on the set to put in all the hobbit holes, making sure that everything, all the wiring was in to make the movie. Where the first car park was put in. And we get up the hill, yeah. So once we get up here, just to our right hand side, that was the technical car park. One day they counted 170 vehicles parked in this little area, 90% of which were actually trucks with all the technical equipment that they needed for the set itself.
Wow.
Now you can imagine the builders all arrived here in the winter of 1999. They would have all their containers set up here, along here on this grass verge. They would build all the set to Hobbiton, and then they'd have to carry it by hand along this ridge you see here to our right. Right around down into the Hobbiton set itself and put it all into place, with those technical people following behind. Now what we're going to do here is take you up on top of the hill. You get a chance to hop out of the van and have a look over and see what New Line Cinemas would have seen when they flew over this property back in 1998. And then we're going to hop back into the vans and drive you down into the Hobbiton set. So once we get up here and I open the door, if you'd like to make your way up onto the top of the hill, just have a look over.
The tree you see down there by the lake is the party tree, and that is the reason that New Line chose the Alexander property. Have a look at that tree and see how symmetrically perfect it is. Compare it with all the other trees on here and you'll understand why they chose this. When the family actually bought New Line people down here and stood them under the tree, they found something else that was very pleasing. When they looked around that whole valley, they found there were no man-made structures, no roads, no power lines, and more importantly, no buildings, except for one. Just above the party tree, you'll see a brown roof building of a hay barn with a little green bale in it. That is the only building that is visible from inside the Hobbiton set. Now originally it had a silver roof, they painted it brown, they put branches around it, it became a tree. End of story, okay? They also found too that when they stood in front of the party tree and looked back towards this bank here, they found they could actually build Hobbiton right in front of it. So they found everything they could have ever wanted, all on the Alexander property. Now then, like we said to you, the first car park over there became too small. The family were then asked by the New Line people if they could build a new car park. They said, yep, fine, go ahead. Now very shortly Jan's going to show you that car park. They also asked the family if they could go in amongst these trees over here and do some extra filming. And what they filmed over there was where Gandalf rides up on his wagon and Frodo says, you're late. And then he jumps onto the wagon with him. Now unfortunately we can't take you in there, because if you look down the bottom here you'll see the big drains, which makes it impossible for us to go across there. Okay, so you'll just have to take my word for that. Again, the family were asked, they said yep, fine, go ahead and film. This was very, very surprising for the American contingent of the film company. Now they told the family that normally where they come from, if it wasn't on the original contract, the contracts would have to be rewritten. As far as the Alexander family were concerned, they had signed their contract in March of '99. This was the end of October, November. They didn't care. You want to go and build a car park, go and do it. You want to go and film, you go and film it. This is one of the reasons why we feel that we have been given permission to do these tours. Now, there are 4 things we're allowed to do on the tours. Before I explain those to you, the one most important thing we have to tell you is the set, or the remains of the set you are coming to visit today, is still owned by New Line Cinema. The farm you are standing on, and wherever you see the sheep in the distance, right over to where those cattle are in the background, right along this whole ridge, follow the fence down, 1,250 acres is all the Alexander property. But the set is still owned by New Line Cinema. Not the land, the set. Okay? Now because of that reason, 1, we can bring you on tour. The tour company is owned by the Alexander family. 2, we're going to show you photo boards, the first of which Jan's going to show you just down the bottom here. These photos were given to the family. 3, we're going to take you inside the remains of Bilbo Baggins' home, Bag End. And 4, this is the most important thing of all, you're not allowed to take photos.
Too late.
Yeah, I'm joking. No, I'm joking on that one. Okay. You also have to remember though that from the day that the Alexanders first signed their contract until we were given permission to do these tours, no one, including the family, were allowed to come down here and take photos. Okay, we have only been operating since the 2nd of December last year. Now it's just a little over 9 and a bit months that we've been operating, so that's where we are today. I think we're at 8,600 people through so far. Okay, please take your photos. If you want me to take them, I normally charge $10.
Okay, I'll do it for 5.
Yeah. It's always the way. Yeah.
Board here, this is the first of the series that you'll be seeing today. Now this photograph down the bottom, that is the technical car park that we talked about on the way in. You can see there most of the vehicles, yes they are trucks, full of technical gear. When they outgrew that, they then made base camp. Base camp was situated just down here. Out in the field there where you see the sheep, there's actually 2 yellow pegs and an orange or red marker peg at the back there. That is to give you an idea of where the tents were out in that field. And the rest that you see here, that is just in front of that fence line. So that was known as base camp. Now the blue and white tent there, that was the food hall. That is where they'd serve up to 400 people a day, 3 times a day, 2-course meals. Now the Alexander family, they were encouraged to come down here and have their meals with the stars, which they did. They tell us the meals they received here were restaurant quality meals. They were more than happy with it.
Was it locals that cooked it?
Well, Peter Jackson actually bought his own catering firm for the purposes of this movie. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, the big white tent there, that was the costume tent where they'd come get their costumes put on before they'd travel down over into the Hobbiton set itself for filming. Now you can imagine there's no water supplies down here, no power, no plumbing, so everything had to be brought in. They had to bring in trucks with generators to generate the power. They brought in water tankers to have the water there. They brought in the portaloos. Basically everything they needed, they had to bring it all in, because you couldn't just pop next door, because you know, it's a long way away. Now have a look at the hillsides here, you'll actually see everything's quite dry. When the filming was done here, it was done here in our summer. We were in the midst of a drought. Like, filming was here for December of '99 and January and February of the year 2000. Now the vans that you see there, they're the vans of the stars. Nobody actually lived here on set at all. They'd travel in from Hamilton, which is like a 45-minute drive in that direction, and they too would travel in every day for the filming and then leave again. They all lived at the Novotel, the hotel in Hamilton, where they got very well looked after. Now this photograph that you see down here, that is Animal Kingdom. That's where they housed, fed and maintained all the animals that they brought on set here. Now they brought their own sheep to this property because they wanted sheep with black faces and black feet, the English looking sheep. So they brought their own sheep in. They also brought with them goats, pigs, horses, donkeys, birds. Basically everything you see on the movie, that was all brought in, all the animals. So yes, they were very well looked after too. Now Animal Kingdom runs from that first pile of dirt you see there, and it actually went right back to that first car park. And that is where they kept all these animals. They had full-time vets here that looked after them while they were here. So not just the animals were looked after, not just the adult, or, you know, the people, but also the animals. Basically everyone that was here got well looked after. But aboards, feel free, you're here, you may do that. You're allowed to do that. So if I've got no questions from you, what we're going to do now is hop back into the vans, and we're actually going to drive down into the Hobbiton Centre south. Out. But otherwise we just bring the two vans. So luckily we haven't
adhere to. We don't have to worry about the top one, slippery slopes. Pretty good today, even after all the rain we had last night. Uneven ground and rabbit holes. As you can see, this is a working farm. So the ground is very uneven and you will see the odd rabbit hole, so just be careful where you're walking. Keep to the paths away from bank or water's edge, mainly for the children. As you can imagine, when children get onto a farm and it's wide open spaces, they chase the sheep, and we just have to be careful that they don't end up in the water, okay? Do not touch or walk above hobbit holes. Now the reason for that is, all the hobbit holes except for Bag End were made of untreated timber. They were made to last 12 months. As of now, it's a little over 3.5 years since the film was done here. So they are showing signs of wear and tear. Not much we can do about it. I'll explain that to you shortly. So if you wish to have a photo in front of them or beside them, that is fine. Just do not climb on top of it. Okay? And of course, the last one on the list there, the whole farm is a no smoking area. Okay? So, welcome to Hobbiton, everyone.
It's in my right pocket.
Okay, good. The sheep are like eating right up next to it, you know?
So hopefully we'll see this in the third movie, because as you know, it wasn't in the first movie. Okay? Right up the very top on the left there, that is Bag End, or Bilbo Baggins' home. We'll be going up there very, very shortly. The other reason why I stopped here was just between the green posts over here. This is where the cutting was, where Gandalf and Frodo actually ride into the Shire. You remember the cutting? The block walls along the side. They come through the cutting, along the path, and as they come up the rise there, works off behind the wagon. That is still the original tree, although it's taken a bit of a beating after 4 years. But that is still where there was a big hedge along that side, but this is where that shot was done. On either side of me, here and here, were two big hobbit holes. Above that log down there was a hobbit hole, and on that side where the sheep are, on that ridge there, were another 4 hobbit holes. Now when we get to the next photo board, I'll explain why those were taken out. Okay? So we'll just make our way around here. Up here, this was taken in July of 99. As you can see, all this area here, you can see how wet it is. So the poor old builders, like I said, had to build Hobbiton during our winter. Have a look up the top here, you can see the beginnings of Bag End. Have a look at the shape of that hill and then compare it to what it is today, and you can see what they did to transform it all. These hobbit holes along the front here were right along this area just in here, in this little gully here. I'll explain those very shortly. This area here, as you can see, all the water lying around, they are slowly starting to drain all that water out. That area there became this. That's the garden area, and that whole garden area was where, from that sheep right through to this bank up here. So that's where the gardens were. In order to make sure he had control over everything, Jackson owned his own nursery. That way he could grow whatever he wanted, when he wanted, how he wanted, and distributed it as well. If you have a look at the detail with the little fences, the way that the little hedges were put in, even the garden sheds, Jackson was renowned for his detail, and most of you will have to agree, in the movie he was pretty spot on, wasn't he? We've still had the odd person come here, even after 8,000 people, and say, no, I think he could have done it better.
Oh no.
Okay, we'll read about that one in the next one, okay? Once everything was put into the ground, two things happened. The first thing was, everything was poisoned. And the reason it was poisoned was because of the rabbits, the possums, and all the other little rodents that live on this farm. As you can imagine, they would have all been sitting up on the top of that hill there, clapping their little paws to see all this stuff arrive. Okay, so everything had to be poisoned. The second reason, those of you that know much about gardening, when you grow vegetables to full maturity and you take them out of the ground, you can't put them back in the ground again. They won't grow. Okay, so what they did was, particularly with the cabbages and the cauliflowers, when they took those out of the ground, they were injected with a hormone. They were then put back in the ground, and that would keep them looking green and fresh looking throughout filming. Okay, if they looked a bit off colour then, they would chuck it away and bring a new one in. And if you remember the top photo board that you saw, you could see how this area was in a drought at the time. So you can imagine how long they would last if they weren't. Okay?
They let them all grow here as well.
Sorry?
They all grew here.
Some of them were grown here, but a lot of them were bought in specifically. Like I said, they only had a certain amount of a frame to work in. Okay, and then they had to have it ready, so in order to do that they grew them in the nursery and brought them out here ready to go. Yeah. Okay, the bottom photo you see here of that hobbit hole is the second hobbit hole just up here behind us. Okay, now then, again the detail, the little fences, the way that he arranged all the gardens, all done to detail. If you have a look here, opened and closed. All the windows were made of glass lead light. Other than that, nothing else was done inside any of the hobbit holes. They're only a facade. Okay. Bag End was the only one that they did a bit of filming inside of. The rest was all done in the studio in Wellington. Okay. The hedges you see in the background here, there's one here and one there. Those are the only two left out of the original set. In order to have those hedges, a local farmer had a farm full of them. They went down, asked if they could buy them. He said fine. They then sent a digger and a truck down there and dug them out very gently and brought them back here and transplanted them. And those are the only two hedges that are left. If you look in here, you can see where all the other hedges were, along here and all over the back of us where those sheep are standing. Now then, why are these hobbit holes still here and why have the rest been taken out? A simple case of work commitments and weather plus the contract. Now the original contract states that once filming was finished, everything had to be returned to its natural state or destroyed. Okay, so this is a farm, so everything had to be returned to its natural state. Now when filming was finished, the end of February of 2000, Jackson waited 10 days to make sure that they didn't have to come back. He then gave the builders permission to start dismantling everything. And what they did first was they took all the facades down of all the hobbit holes, put them into 2 big containers and shipped them back to Wellington where they were destroyed. They then gave the digger permission to come in and start demolishing all the hobbit holes, took out all the garden, filled in the cutting, on that side there, here, up the other end of the party field and across the other side of the lake. By the end of March, November, the weather had changed. The rains came, the digger operator had other work commitments. He said to the family, I will come back the following summer and take the rest out. In the meantime, the family had people knocking on their door, wanting to come and visit the remaining set. It was then they set about getting permission from New Line. It took them over 2 years to get that permission, nearly 2.5 years. And that's why it's taken us so long to actually have the tours up and running to what they are today. How you see the hobbit holes in the photos and in the movie is how we are not allowed to show them to you. We are not allowed to paint them. We are not allowed to put flowers in. We're not allowed to do anything that would depict the movie. All we're allowed to do is use the remaining set. We're not even allowed to rebuild anything. Now believe me, we've had a lot of people say, why not? Because. That's it. We just cannot give you an answer.
If the ones that are starting to sort of maybe rot, or
Yep.
are you allowed to do anything to upkeep?
We are allowed to maintain them to the state in which they were taken over. However, if you look at the top ones, you can see that the roofs have fallen down on them. What we would like to do is take the fronts off those hobbit holes, put treated timber on the inside, jack them up, block them, and put the same front back in again. Now, is that rebuilding them, or is that maintaining them? Now, we've been wondering that question for the last 3 months, and we still haven't got an answer. Believe me, New Line are very, very quick in giving answers, as you can see. Okay, without trying to be too sarcastic about them, they are very good at the moment for letting us do what we do. They have been here. We haven't known when they've been here, but obviously when Russell was talking to Peter Jackson one day, he made a comment that made Russell realise that somebody had actually been here. That had checked us out, yeah. So we have to be very careful, because the new contract now states in a couple of words, the boys are allowed to dismantle those whenever they feel they can do it, and that New Line still have the right to cease our operation for whatever reason, with one letter, at no cost and no comeback to them. So, hey, we've got to behave ourselves. Okay? So believe me, you can imagine now about 8,000 people, all the questions have been asked. So I can't give you any better than that. Okay? Anybody have any questions?
Du siehst ja, das ist ja runtergekommen sind und die haben immer das Recht, Sachen aufrechtzuerhalten und nicht
Now,
wieder aufzubauen.
just before we go up onto the party field, if you have a close look at these trees here, these trees are apple trees. Nothing unusual about that, except during the movie they have plums on them. Okay, so these are actually plum trees in the movie. Those of you who have read the third book will understand this paragraph. The children were sitting under the plum trees, eating plums and building pyramids out of the stones. Hence the trees. Plum trees, as you know, grow quite tall. Apple trees are low to the ground. These were hobbits. They went with the apple trees. When they planted them, they then took the leaves off all these trees and rewired them with artificial plum leaves. They then put artificial plums on them as well. Okay? Now then, if they don't use these trees in the third movie, then they've gone to a hell of a lot of expense, time and energy for nothing. Okay? Because you see them as a glimpse as Gandalf and Frodo ride past here, just as a flick. Okay? But if they do use them in the third movie, you'll all be able to stand up in the middle of the theatre and go, those aren't plum trees, they're apple trees, I've seen them. And I'm sure you'll get a very, very good response from everybody. Jan and I are going to do that when we go and see them.
One at each end of the theatre, of course.
Now we're just going to make our way up here to the party field.
This is a beautiful tree, isn't it?
It's amazing.
Very symmetrical.
Now then, just before we go on to the party field here, just a few things to point out to you. Before this became the party field, this whole area here was a very big swamp. It was quite a bad swamp, to the point that a few years ago, Mr. Alexander Sr. wanted to cut down that tree.
Oh,
and his reason for cutting down the tree was because on the other side where those two sheep are standing there is the main path that led up the hill from that gateway over there. Now, sheep being as stupid as they are, as he brought them through the gate, up the path, half of them would go in a straight line, the other half would run across the swamp. The family would then have to come down and pull them out of the swamp. So hence Mr. Alexander decided to get rid of the obstacle, the tree. Now thankfully one of his sons said to him, Dad, if you cut that tree down, it's going to land in the swamp. and it's going to take us even longer to clean it out. So he decided to leave it. Thankfully he did. It's probably the most famous tree in the world today. In order to make the party field here, the New Zealand Army brought in tons and tons and even more tons of gravel. They raised this field. They then took all the dirt off the road that we drove in on, the 2 car parks, and off the front of this hill, and put that on top of this as well. They've raised this field about 20 to 30 feet. The original height was where the original garden was, just down here.
Wow.
So that's the height that the ground actually started from to what you see it is today. Now thankfully the farmer has himself a very good little paddock now that he doesn't have to worry about. Now before I turn you over to Jan onto the party field, we normally ask those of you with video cameras if we can hold them for you while you dance across the party field.
Okay. I don't think so.
I got caught out about that one time. I said that, and the 6'6" giant from New York threw the camera to one of our other guides and then grabbed me by the scruff of the shoe.
Let you dance.
Yeah, so that's why I don't wear my dancing shoes anymore. So if you'd just like to follow Jan across there, what I might add too is a good shot of the party tree is better when you get up the back end. You then get the whole tree in it. Okay?
Dragon fireworks, and they took it inside the tent. Well, this is where the tent was situated. Of course, they took that dragon fireworks in. The tent itself was on a spring system and a pulley system from the tree over to the bank. So when the fireworks went up, the tent went up and got whisked out of the way. Now, of course, we all see in the movie the dragon appear. There was actually no dragon here, unfortunately. That was all digitally imposed in the studios in Wellington. So to cue all the actors here, you know, to fall over, get away from the dragon that wasn't here, they had a cherry picker just parked over to my left here, which is like a little crane. On it they had a big arm and a huge big light, and that is what they used to wave across the field here, to cue the actors to fall over the tables and the chairs, lie on the ground, really terrified of the dragon. Now, you can imagine the Alexander family down here that night, sitting on the hill watching filming. All they could see were all these people down here going crazy, and this light being waved across. It wasn't until they actually went to the movie themselves and watched it that they realised, oh, that's what they were doing that night. There's a dragon down here. Now in the movie itself, of course, we see the dragon, and as it goes out and everyone's falling to the ground, it goes over the lake, above those trees over there, where it all explodes. So you'll actually see that. Because when you leave here today, I can just about guarantee you'll all go and grab that video, whatever it is, put it in the machine, and you're going to watch it again. Because everyone does it. So you'll remember that bit in it, and you'll see all of that lit up. Now, to the tree itself here, we still have a little wee piece of authentic party ribbon left over to all go backwards party. This here is also where they hung up the big banner, Happy Birthday Bilbo Baggins. So if you'd like to make your way over here, we're going to go on to the next photo boards. And of course, no, she's actually stuck there now.
Yellow marker, blue marker down by the lake, and of course on this side where all the ducks are congregating, you'll see 3 red markers. The orange markers are this building here, side of the lake. I'll show you in another photograph, which was a little stable. It's basically on the end of this one. The blue marker is the beginning of the double arch bridge that goes across the lake to the top red marker. Next to the stump, that's where the bridge went to. Now the other 2 red markers, one is that little bridge there, or little landing, and the other is where the mill was. The bridge itself, if you look at this photo here, was constructed of scaffolding. An Auckland company came down. It took them 3.5 weeks to build that bridge. They just bolted it all together. Okay. On the inside, they put plywood. You can just see it through here. They put sheets of plywood. And on this side here, they built the block wall that they needed. Here is your block wall. Good old-fashioned styrofoam, polystyrene, whatever you want to call it. That is the block wall, okay? This wall here, the chimneys even the face on this building here and part of that one. Remember I said to you all the facades were taken down off the Hobbit holes and sent back to Wellington where they were destroyed? All this stuff. So every Hobbit hole that you see on the movie, the front of it is this.
It wouldn't have lasted anyway, even
No.
if they'd left it here.
It wouldn't have lasted at all.
Okay.
Okay, so it was a good thing they actually took it down.
Well, the sheep would have eaten it too.
Well, there would have been so much of it blowing around here, it just wouldn't have been worth looking at.
Yeah.
Okay. In order to make sure that he had control, Jackson actually owned his own company.
Oh no, again.
He actually had a machine up the back here in the car park that he used. Here is Peter Jackson here. If you look at the top of the bridge, you can see the big sheets that he used of polystyrene. Now, those of you, most of you would have seen in books or on movies, the big Hollywood sign in LA. Okay, you've all seen that. They had one up the back here called Pollywood. Because they used so much of the styrofoam. Now unfortunately Jackson didn't have a very good sense of humour this particular day, because within an hour of him seeing it, it was taken down.
Oh no.
Okay. How strong was the bridge? Well, it was pretty strong, as you can well imagine. And Gandalf and Frodo actually ride down through this paddock and over the bridge with the horse and cart. Okay, so they come through that paddock, down, across and over. Okay. Mr. Alexander Sr. did the same thing one day with his four-wheel drive ute. He came down the paddock, saw it, decided over the bridge he'd go, waved to everybody, through the village and just kept on going. Nobody said anything to him. A couple of days later he decided to repeat it, over the bridge, through the village, waved goodbye. Unfortunately this time he brought a mob of sheep with him. Now one of the sons said to him, "Dad, you've got to stop doing that. The bridge is for the movie only. It is not for us to use." "Oh, okay then," he said, and started to bring his stock back around the proper way. Well, they didn't even bat an eyelid. They didn't say anything to him. It was only one of his sons that did it. The mill, well, you have to remember that every day that the family came here, everything changed daily. They had no idea what they were looking at. Okay. They arrived down one day onto where their bottom red peg was, or is, and there were a lot of poles in the ground. They had no idea what they were looking at. A couple of days later, a truck turned up with a building on the back of it, with a crane behind it. They picked that building up, put it on top of the poles. It became the mill. Complete with a little electric motor that drove that wheel. They just hooked it up to our batteries and it just turned the wheel nice and slowly. The thatching you see on the roofs is all this bulrushes that you see along the front of the lake here and in the swamp there. Now they had a team of 8 who did 3.5 months in our winter picking all that stuff. They did this pond, they did the 2 back ones, and they did 3 neighbouring farms, pulling all those bulrushes. They brought it back to the farm where they were dried, and at the end of November they were all tied together in bunches and put on the roofs as thatching, ready for filming. You wouldn't have paid me enough money to do that. Absolutely not. Anybody have any questions about that photo? A little stable. And here's your double arch bridge and your mill. And here that they've actually ploughed the field up ready to put in crops. Sunflower, buttercup, oats, maize and corn. Okay, right across that whole field there. The 2 back paddocks were here. They were locked up for long-standing grass. They just left them there for the whole 13 months. From the day they arrived, nothing was in those paddocks. They just let the grass grow. And it was used as a backdrop when they were filming. Okay. Now this photograph here was actually taken by one of the set guys building the set. New Line Cinema found that photo. It now belongs to them. Like we said to you, no one was allowed to come in here and take photos without their permission. I often tell the story occasionally too that at our local rugby club, which I manage, this is only a part-time job, and Jan and her husband and most of our guides are all members of our rugby club, as are the family. Now one day a bus driver arrived there, he saw my hat, we got into conversation. The upshot of the conversation was he was here during filming. He arrived here as a truck driver to deliver some stuff. While he was here he thought he'd go for a wander. As he was wandering around he had a little camera hidden under his jacket. And he would just look around, take a photo and move around. He was here for an hour and a half. As he got to the front gate on his way out, the security guard stopped him, said, "How are you?" He says, "Great." "What did you think of the set?" "Marvellous, absolutely brilliant." Okay. He said, "You really enjoy it?" He says, "Yes, I did." The security guard then said to him, "Can I have your camera, please?" He thought for a minute and said, "What camera?" The security guard then produced a photograph of him taking photos. That photograph. Oh, those photos. See the tips of the chimneys on the pub. But at normal speed it just goes fast. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Camera's flashing. Just like to make your way up there with Jen.
So yes, that is why Peter Jackson basically bought his own nursery, because he knew the extent of the plant life that he needed here on set. Now have a look, everything's nice, lush and green. Now we told you that we were in the midst of a drought when the filming was done here. Have a look at this bottom photograph, you'll actually see a hose that ran along the track here. That was for irrigation. To start with, they started with the lake, used the water from there to irrigate. It got too messy, they then brought in trucks, tankers full of water. And of course they would bring it all in here and keep this whole area irrigated. So when you see the movie again and you see everything was lush and green, just think back to that very first photo board that we did show you where the food hall was and everything, because in reality that is how the landscape around this farm did look. It was only this Hobbiton set itself that was kept nice and lush and green.
This basically shows you what Bag End looked like during the movie. The plant life alone, from what we were told, is well over 200 plants throughout this whole area, right around the corner. Okay, you can see the big planting boxes just to the left of the seat. We actually had a lady here who offered us a seat, and we thought, oh, that'd be good, you know, people could sit here and get their photos. No, bad idea. Now, spare a thought, like I said, for the horse and wagon as they come around the corner. And if you remember that shot on the movie, it was actually done from a helicopter, which was hovering above the first photo board that we stopped at. So what happens is the camera starts off at that, and then it picks up the horse and wagon as it comes around the corner. As they come up here, the camera zooms in on a bit closer, right up until the point that it stops. From there, when Gendorf gets off and walks up the steps, it's done from a boom camera off the end of this landing. So he walks up the steps here, he knocks on the door, he stands back, and when Bilbo opens the door, that whole complete shot was done in the studio in Wellington. Now the reason for that is Bilbo, Sam, Frodo and Gandalf were all the same height. So in order to make Bilbo look like a hobbit, they reproduced that whole frontage in the studio and they built it 2.5 times bigger than what it normally should. Then they had the camera looking down, and that's why it makes Bilbo look small when he opens the door. As Bilbo runs out, they come back here, and as you see Gandalf hug Bilbo, that's actually a double, just a little boy. Okay? Then when they get up and walk in, they walk in the door, just the first part of the door, and just to one side. The camera was in the back, and as it's facing out, just before they close the door. Okay, you remember that part? Now, from there, they go straight back to the studio. Now, in the studio in Wellington, they had 2 sets, one for Bilbo, one for Gandalf. And that way, they had a very high ceiling for Bilbo, over 2 meters, and for for Gandalf, they had the smaller ceiling, so it always made them a little hunched up. Okay? So, when they were in the same room together, and I'm not 100% sure how they did it, but they actually had cameras mounted on angles. Even though they were in the same room, one would make one look smaller and the other would make them look taller. It's just the way that they set the cameras up. So, from here, what we normally do is, I grab your camera, and then you go up there and I'll take a photo. Trees. They asked him if they could buy one. He said yes. They then brought in an engineer to cut that tree down. They cut it down branch by branch, limb by limb, trunk by trunk. They numbered them, they photographed them. They then loaded them onto 2 truck and trailer units and brought them back out here. That tree weighed 26 tonne. When they got the tree here, they then laid it on the ground from this tree right back out to the road that we came up the hill on. They just laid everything out on the ground there. They then employed some students to come in and rewire all the branches with artificial oak leaves. 250,000 of them. They were imported from Taiwan. Once they were done, they then rebuilt the tree by bolting it back together. When it was finished, they picked it up with a crane, they dug a hole above bag end, they then put the tree in the ground. But instead of having it upright, they leant it over on an angle so that everything hung over bag end. Now the cost to buy that tree, to cut it down, to rebuild it, just under 23,000 New Zealand dollars. Count the amount of times you see that tree in the movie, 20 seconds, max. Okay, so that's not a bad price for a tree, just over $1,000 a second.
Oh yeah.
Idea how they had to bolt it all back together, basically piece by piece.
So one main week.
Explain.
So this part has not been filmed yet.
Grab
in
a
the
photo
first two
in
movies.
front of one of the holes or wherever you want to go.
But we'll probably be seeing the last movie.
And this guy had a Frodo t-shirt on, and his claim to fame was he'd seen the movie 151 times.
Oh no!
Believe
That was
me.
last December, imagine now.
Yeah, exactly. Now, as recent as about 6 weeks ago, I was on the way back with the bus, and I mentioned, remember that guy? I mentioned it in passing, and a voice behind me said, I can better that. And I looked around, and there was this kid about 18, wouldn't have been any older than 18, wouldn't he? With a mohawk, and his mother was sitting beside him, and she said, yep, since the video and the DVD have come out, he's owned them, the first ones, and every day he watches the movie.
Every day.
He's got it on his computer.
He's got it on his computer too, he's got a laptop,
Yeah.
and he watches it.
I mean, he's got nothing better to do, he just flicks on the movie and he watches it.
It's not a
every
short
day.
movie.
So these are not
So
in
he
the
must have
first two
watched
movies,
bits of
but
it
they'll
all
probably be
the
seen in the
So I'm
last
thinking to
movie.
myself,
That's where Keith took my picture.
back. So yeah, I mean it's amazing, eh?
You have to have a little bit of a higher threshold for the movie doing this all the time. No?
We don't, to tell you an honest truth, I'd never actually seen the movie until Russell asked me if I would do this job for him. And it basically went along, this is the middle of October last year. He rang me up and said, hi, I've got a proposition for you. Yeah, what's that, Russell? We're going to start running tours out to Hobbiton. Where's that? It's on our property. What is it? It's where they filmed Lord of the Rings. Did they? Yes, they did.
What's that?
Oh, what did you want me to do? We want you to organise our tours for us. Help with the tours.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and visit my website for free ebooks and downloads.